If you love the idea of making your own video games, but you don't love the idea of learning how to code, I'm going to show you how I built and launched a game without ever having to touch a line of code. Also, hi, I'm Holly. I'm a game developer who started making video games in quarantine. I've now made several of my own games, and I would love to teach you how to make yours as well. Let's get started. If you are interested in making your own video games, primarily because you want to focus on the art or the storytelling, I have good news for you, and that's you do not need to know how to program to make your own games. There will be no gatekeeping here today, but there are going to be some things that you'll want to consider, so I encourage you to stick around to the end. I have now made games with programming and without programming. I will tell you the pros and cons of each, and I will let you be the judge. But if you've been a gamer for a while, you'll probably have noticed that a lot of games have similarities. When you see a chest in a game, you can expect to get a cool item out of it. When you see something with spikes on it, you can expect that that thing is going to hurt you. And when you see a ledge, you probably know not to fall off of it. While all of that may feel really intuitive to you, they're building on the knowledge that game developers have been setting for decades. And these similarities between games are what make no-code games possible, and they are called patterns. Patterns are repeatable, expected paths in video games. They help guide players and reduce the friction of learning a new game by having a certain set of standards. Little patterns can fold up into bigger patterns. Say when you open that chest, it goes into your inventory system. A lot of inventory systems are going to be very, very similar, if not identical to each other. And this is because it's all based on what the player is used to. If a player is used to something, in general, it's better to follow that than it is to create something new. Generally, game designers are going to want to opt for the thing that's more commonly used for players so that players don't have to learn something new. Anytime you're introducing something where you have to learn something new, you're adding friction. So if you're gonna do something new, it better have a big payoff. Another example of a pattern, if you've played Resident Evil, you'll know that you save using the typewriter, but if you've played any of the Horizon games, you know that you will save with the campfire. It's the exact same pattern, but it's used just slightly differently. Just how little patterns can fold up into bigger patterns can actually fold up into entire genres, like a farming sim, or a platformer, or a battle royale. They all use a very, very similar structure, but they're just slightly different enough to make it interesting. Which is good news for us, because luckily there are game developers who make games, and there are also game developers who make templates. You can buy entire templates for games for less than the cost of a new game, which blew my mind when I figured that out, and honestly, it still blows my mind. However, you're not really going to be able to create anything new in terms of the general rules of the game. I think this is actually good for beginner game devs because doing something that's tried and true means that your game is going to be fun, and you're not going to have to pinpoint down exactly what makes a game fun. The mechanics are already going to be there. You can definitely add your own original twist, but you're not going to be changing the foundation of the game. I think most people want this anyway. Typically, we have one or a few games as game developers that heavily inspire us and that we want to try to replicate ourselves. So I think this is a really, really great way to learn and to create your own games without having to spend years and years and years on a game. So if that sounds like what you want to do, what's really helpful here is knowing the exact nomenclature of what you're looking for. Game developers are game developers and are not necessarily SEO or search engine optimization specialists. So you may have to scour a little bit for what exactly it is that you're looking for. Or you can just do what I did and scour the dozens and dozens and dozens of pages that are dedicated specifically for templates. So if you have a game in mind, now we can begin searching for that template. Most game engines are going to have a marketplace and templates. I know for a fact that Unity and Unreal both do. But in my case, I wanted to create a 2D game, so I chose the Unity engine. So my idea was that I wanted to create a twist on Candy Crush, but make it origami themed. So what I did was I narrowed down the search to that exact type of game. Candy Crush is what's called a 3D match game. So using that query, I was actually able to find the template that I ended up using. The genre name is always going to be more helpful than the actual type of game you're trying to replicate. For instance, if you wanted to create something like Fortnite, instead of typing in Fortnite, you would type in Battle Royale. And instead of typing in Resident Evil, you would type in something like first-person shooter horror. Even then, you may not get what you're looking for, and it can take some scouring, but it is definitely worth it and super interesting to see everything that people make. However, I have a really great list of templates that I have personally bought and used that are fantastic. If you just want to have some really solid starting ground, I'll put all the links below in the description. But here is the exact package that I used for my mobile game. Mobile games are typically a little bit more expensive in my experience, but that's because they are very, very polished and you can pretty much use them right out of the box and they are good to go, good to launch almost immediately. This template is awesome and has incredibly detailed documentation that even for complete beginners and non-programmers, you can definitely understand this. Now, a note on templates. Like I said, the mobile game ones are going to be a lot more polished in my experience. The PC ones are really, really great, but each are going to have some tiny idiosyncrasies that you're probably going to have to live with or find some way around it or just deal with it. You can absolutely look at the documentation to see what all they're going to have before you purchase it, but you are ultimately going to be limited by what somebody else can create. Next is actually importing your template into your game. From there, that's when you'll know how much freedom you truly have to add your own twist on the game. However, typically anything art related, anything UI related is really not going to be a problem. That's what these templates are designed for. They're designed to give you the functionality that you want, while also being able to add all of your own art and your own twist. I decided with my game that all of my art was going to be original. I didn't choose that at first, but as I went along, it just seemed to make sense, and I really wanted it to be my own at the end of the day. I copied all of the existing art from the template into a Figma file, and then did a one-to-one, their version versus my version, so I could quickly see everything that I needed and everything that I was missing. And then I just uploaded it with the exact same name and hit OK when Unity asked if I wanted to replace the file, and that was able to replace everything. Didn't even have to worry about hooking things up the right way. As long as the name was the same, I was good to go. With all of that being said, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro is that if you don't want to code, you don't have to, and that can save you an unbelievable amount of time. But the biggest caveat to that is that if you want to do anything outside of the template, you're pretty much out of luck. Even if, say you wanted to add multiple packages to a game, you can definitely do that, but you'll need at least some basic knowledge of coding just to know how to integrate those packages. Plus, when you're doing that, you're not overcoming just the barrier between you and learning how to code. There's also a second barrier, and that's learning what the person who coded the template is trying to say. For my game, Origami Match, it was very complete, but it didn't come with a push notification system, which to me, I viewed that as a very critical part of the game just to get people to come back. So I actually added in that piece myself. In full transparency, there hasn't been an entire project that I have been able to take to launch purely from the template. However, I think that's because I'm a little picky. Plus, if something goes wrong, you're gonna wanna know how to debug it. So even having a teeny tiny amount of programming knowledge is going to take you very, very far when it comes to game development. If nothing else, it can teach you how to weave multiple packages together so that you can have a really full, complete, robust game, and that if you want to add functionality, but you don't want to learn how to program, you'll still be able to do it. Which brings me to the sponsor of this video, Brilliant. Brilliant teaches you how to learn by doing thousands of interactive lessons. If you're anything like me and you really need to see the whole picture before you can truly learn something, this may be really helpful for you. Brilliant can teach you how to think like a programmer using critical thinking skills instead of watching mind-numbing YouTube tutorials. They have courses on general programming, which can teach you all of the basics that you'll need to learn how to code, from loops to variables to nesting and conditionals, all of which you will use in game development. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit the URL brilliant.org/rigormortistortoise, or scan the QR code on screen. Or you could click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this content. Let me know in the comments what game you're going to be creating from a template. And with that, I hope to see you in the next one.